Welcome to another edition of Unplugged. We could get used to this. 5 wins in a row now, first time since 2011 when we won 6 in a row and a bit of a late season surge that particular year. But continuing to feel better and better and develop a little bit more trust. I think the majority of us remain always cautiously nervous, and I think we all felt that way leading up to the Giants game, and we certainly feel that way, I think, whenever we play Port Adelaide and whenever we play games at, in inverted commas, random venues like Cairns. They always make you a touch nervous, but the side going nicely and putting all of the blocks in place. A really, really impressive win last Friday night against a team that doesn't appear to be much good, and a side that's clearly got its problems. There's a lot of talent there that we spoke about, and that talent can be dangerous. We saw a lot of them. Toby Green had his moments. Cal Ward was good. Obviously, Canelio and various others did bits and pieces. But it was a game we were expected to win, but a lot of things went wrong. We missed easy shots at goal. We lost both of our ruckmen. We had to dig deep and come from behind again. And it was a win full of merit and full of resilience, and one that I was certainly most proud of in the aftermath of that game. And I'm sure the majority of Saints fans were the same. It really did show some character and a team that was up for the fight, and they need to be again this week. Nick, I know both you and H by chance happen to be on holiday in roughly the same spot, but you were taking in the contest, and we were all exchanging in our various message groups. But yeah, that was a very, very meritorious victory.
It was. And yeah, H, you and I are about a kilometre apart on vacation and somehow couldn't get around to watching the game together. But it was. You said it, Parker. It was, in terms of the pride of a win like that. I haven't felt like that after a win for quite a while. I think probably the GWS game, the final game of 2020, and then obviously the Bulldogs win was a different type of win. But we spoke about this game last week, and yes, the Giants aren't going all that well. We know that they were 1-4 at that point heading into the game. We know that it was a worry game for us. It was a bit of a trap game for us, but those are the types of games that if we're legitimate, if we want to be playing finals footy, we've got to be winning those games. We can't let games like the Giants, we can't be dropping those games. And for a while, it certainly looked like that was a possibility. Certainly a danger game. We certainly weren't at our best in terms of the type of footy that we're trying to play and that we want to play. But what was super impressive was that every time the Giants pushed, we had an answer, and we were able to kind of fight against the odds. We were able to push through all the issues that we faced, be it injury and personnel and all those sorts of things, or umpiring and some of those decisions, and we were able to fight through and find a way to win. And that's the really impressive thing about our first 6 weeks, is that all of our wins so far seem to have come in different ways. And, the Hawthorn game was a relatively easy game. We played fantastic football for nigh on 4 quarters. The Richmond game also kind of had these withering bursts of offensive and defensive football. Fremantle was a bit of a grind, and we probably got away with one that potentially, over the course of the 4 quarters, we probably didn't deserve, but we got away with it and found a way to do it. And to just fight through adversity and to grind out a win where, in previous years, that's a game that we would have lost ultimately, by 5 or 6 goals. Dropped the bundle as soon as they started pressing, and they pressed hard in that final quarter. They pressed really hard. And we were just able to fight through it and will our way to a win. It was tough. It was hard fought. It wasn't based on individual brilliance. It was just, a real grind, but they found a way and they found a will. And, it was super impressive.
And the pleasing part was, we were undermanned. We missed 4 goals from within 20 metres. They got a goal from a dodgy 50 and a dodgy free kick in the last quarter, the one against Patton for holding the ball. So on the balance of things, factoring in all of that, we probably should have won the game by upwards of 6 goals, even with all of those things considered. So, H, it was another win of a good side. And, we're probably not all yet ready to collectively admit that, but hopefully it's the truth.
Yeah,
I did say it was a danger game. It's GWS a team that can come out and play any stage of the season. They're going in 1-4 last week, but you can't write them off even at 1-4. And on top of that, as we saw, Green was coming back. We managed to keep him reasonably quiet, which was basically, as we said, the first thing we had to do. But yeah, you get into hearing that siren at the end of the game. I think the first feeling I think most people had was a huge sigh of relief. That was okay. We escaped, and you just sort of took it in. And a few minutes later, you go, "Geez, that was a good win. That was a really good win." But I think I sat there for about 2-3 minutes after the game, going, "We escaped. We definitely escaped that one. We it's just one of those nights where everything went against us, pretty much. A couple of things went our way, but so much went against us. And to hold on, that just digging in, fighting and wanting to hold on to the result and get that win. And it's, as you say, it's sort of a game that you've seen us turn over many times before. And you sort of go, okay, this group's got a bit of resolve in them. They've got that. We want our results. We want these wins. We want to do anything possible to get them. And we saw some players really, really stand up and show us that's what they're there for. They're there to play for the club. They're there to play for their mates. They're going to dig deep when they need to, and that's how we came out with the 4 points.
I don't, in that last quarter, your brain writes scripts, I think, sometimes. And it was a frustrating watch because you couldn't help but have that sinking feeling. I mean, Mason Wood missed one really tight at the end of the third quarter. Then at the start of the last, we kicked either 3 or 4 points in a row. And I remember just screaming at the TV thinking, we only have to kick one and it's done. And we just couldn't get it. We just kept missing and missing and missing. And then they got a goal from a dodgy free kick. And you're like, I've seen this movie before. We've missed chances. They get a gift. It gets them on a roll. But then obviously they stuffed up that next chance when Flynn took that mark, hand passed it to Himmelberg, which, by the way, went out of bounds on the full. But anyway.
Yeah, I know. That wasn't a point. There's no way that was a point.
But and again, you see things like that and you're like, that'll bite us on the arse, I bet you. But thankfully it didn't. And yeah, I think it was all of those emotions. It was a frustrating watch, but at the same time, you knew you were watching us fight to the death, so to speak, and go, I'm proud of what they're doing. We don't deserve to lose. But you could kind of see it coming. And, it was just that relief mixed with pride, knowing that the watch was a really difficult one.
I think the biggest problem I had too was that I think Nick was at home with his family watching. I was at a pub where every second guy that walked past me was going, "Oh, you're safe. I'm going, no, we're not. We're not safe. There's no way."
Even the commentators were doing that with 2 minutes to go. They were wrapping up how good a win it was. And I'm like, hang on a second. And then Canelio hit the post with a minute to go. And I'm like, it could easily be a draw if he kicks that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, people walked past going, "Oh, you're safe." And we're not yet. No way. I mean, this was 10 minutes to go. I'm thinking, not even close. So, yeah, it's just that sort of thing that does not help.
It does go to show that I think one of the things that we've started talking about in the last week or so is that we look like a different team. We don't look like St Kilda of old. And I know, there's question marks about the opposition that we've played and who we've beaten, all that sort of stuff. And we'll find out a hell of a lot more over the next month or so. We've got Port and Cairns, like you touched on, the Demons, and then Geelong. So it's a pretty tough stretch. But just looking at some of the raw data, the raw numbers, and I've got some data from Ed Carmody, who's one of the writers at Zero Hanger, who's just put together a couple of pieces of raw numbers for us that just go to show that this is a different St Kilda that we're talking about now, and the way that we play, the way that we attack and defend. But just at a real basic level, our average score week to week, our average score this year is nearly 21 points higher than it was last year. Our average score conceded is just over 9 points less than last year. We are averaging nearly 5 scoring shots more this year than we were last year per game. And then you get into second halves, and we've seen. I know, Parker, you tweeted about second halves on Friday night or Saturday morning, whatever it was after the game.
And cheers to Channel 7 for that as well. But anyway.
But average second half scores for us last year, our average second half score was 39.1 points. Our average second half score this year is 51.6 points. It's a massive uplift. And in terms of points conceded, average second half points conceded in 2021, 21.7, and in 2022, 13.6. Another incredible uplift. Defensively, we've obviously won 5 out of 6 second halves this year. We've won 10 out of 12 second half quarters, which is amazing. And defensively, we've conceded 10 or less goals in a game 4 out of 6 times. That's 66%. Last year was 11 of 22. It's 50%. I think across the board, offensively, defensively, we're better. We're better at things like stoppages, although for a number of reasons, stoppages and clearances and contests, etc., was not our forte on Friday night. We know that, having lost Hayes and Marshall for most of the second half. But this is a different St Kilda, and I think Brett Ratton has to take a lot of credit for that. I think we said a few weeks ago in one of our segments about who needs to lift. Was it Brett Ratton needed to lift in the way that he was coaching, and we needed to see more. We needed some plan Bs, some plan Cs. We needed to have more dynamicism, etc. But also Nick Walsh, who's the fitness coach or high performance manager or whatever you want to call him, he's come from GWS as well, and has been a defensive coach in his own right across defensive lines. So he's got defensive experience, but he's also what looks like revitalized our fitness and our physicality and our power and strength and the ability for us to run out games. And it comes with that, the mentality of the guys knowing that they can do that. And that, when there's 2 minutes to go and GWS are pressing and you've got guys like Kelly and Cornelio and Taranto pushing through the middle, that, they know that they can run with them and they can go with them and they can keep putting the stops on.
Yeah, we've gone from even direct comparison to last year. So last year we were 2-4, and this year 5-1. So we're 3 games better off, and our percentage is 61 points higher than it was at the same time last year, which is ridiculous, astronomically higher. So obviously you've got to go on with it, and the draw's still tough. We've still got to play Geelong twice, Sydney twice, Brisbane twice, Melbourne. We've got Adelaide and they look like they've improved a little bit. We've got Freo again. We've still got to play Carlton. So that there's tricky matches, but at the same time, those matches are proving tricky for them as well. Love the write-up too. We'll obviously give them a plug. I think it sort of sums up the way most of us sort of feel, the RWB footy boys on Twitter that sort of put those write-ups together. I think if you haven't had a chance to read those yet, I think they encapsulate the feelings of Saints fans really, really well.
Best recap
Mm-hmm.
online, week after week after week, no matter win, loss or draw. 100% worth a read for every Saints fan.
Yep, definitely. So it sort of captures the emotion really well. We're going to catch up shortly with Alicia Loxley, newsreader and reporter journalist with Channel 9 and diehard Saints fan. Anyone who's been to Best and Fairest or watched the Best and Fairest online in recent years, she's been hosting those. And so we'll chat to her about what it's like to be a Saints fan and ride the wave. And as always, we want you to sort of throw your request in with us, be it celebrity fans that we might not even know about, for example. You can sort of tweet those through to us. Particular players you want to hear from. Obviously, you can look through our back catalogue and see who we have spoken to, and if there's names, we know the obvious ones like Lockett and Rewalt and things like that. But anyone out of left field, like last year we spoke to, say, Jason Heatley, and we've had Troy Swartz and Brett Moyle. If there's anyone that has a story to tell that you'd like to hear from, just send that communication through to us. But Max King's
favourite player, Troy Swartz.
Yeah, absolutely. Which started a nice little Twitter topic. But I think we all had those random numbers on our back from time to time. And he might have been there that night. And hopefully Max will listen to that episode with Troy Swartz to talk about it. But votes, again, it's a tricky one. Again, there'll be a lot of apologies. And we haven't mentioned someone yet who I think deserves to be mentioned for his heroics, and he'll come up in these votes, I'm sure. But H, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, as I just said, a lot of apologies. Again, I couldn't fit the captain in. huge game again. Like, did everything he had to do, but I just feel there was a couple of players ahead of him that just gave us that little bit extra at the right time to keep us in the game. So him an apology, Crouch an apology, Gresham apology. It was a pretty good team effort when you look at it, but in the end, I actually really, really impressed. He started really having impact in the game after Marshall went down. So you look at, or what I think it was like about the first time that he started hobbling around a little bit. It was about some point in the second quarter. But towards the end of the second quarter, then he had a huge third quarter. And I think that's really set the tone for the rest of the team. But I was really impressed with Zebros. I thought he had a brilliant game. That third quarter that he played, got a few intercepts, cleared the ball out for us a number of times, gave us some real drive. And what he did, he moved the ball quickly. He's always been someone who's been a little bit stagnant at times, but he moved the ball so quickly Friday. And you just saw it go, that's what we want him doing. We don't want this, get the ball, turn around and look the other way like he was doing for a few years there at one point. He basically picked the ball up, looked at what's ahead, what's in front of me, and delivered the ball beautifully a few times and really, really got us moving well. So I gave him 1. 2, Jack Higgins. Great game for a small forward. It's sort of a game that I didn't think the guy that I gave 3 to, if he didn't play such a great game, he would have been a 3 voter, no worries at all. Maybe if he kicked those 2 from 10 meters in front, he might have got the 3. But yeah, I think he really needs to just settle in those situations. I think a little bit. You get what did he say? He goes at a million minutes a second or something. So just needs to calm himself and go back, do the routine, put it through, because you can sort of forgive one, but then you repeat it immediately. Only a couple of minutes later, you sort of go, come on, you can't be doing that. And those 2 misses could have ultimately been the difference in a result when you look back. So it's a big thing that, yeah, just get those little things right. But 3, Josh Battle, he was massive. I was so impressed with his game. That was a massive game. He is one of the reasons we stayed in that game, and probably the reason we stayed in the game for so long. It wasn't just in the back line; it was in the midfield. It was on the wing. It was at the top of the 50, even when GWS were trying to get out of our 50. You looked and he was there at the contest. He was there tagging a player. He was there spoiling their forwards, all over the place. That's it. Like we call him that old utility, and that's what he did on Friday. He did every single different sort of thing that he had to do to make sure we won the game. And there's 18 positions on the field. It almost felt like he was in about 25 positions. He was just in every single spot you could even imagine. So impressed with that game, and yeah, well deserved 3 votes.
Nick?
Very similar. I wanted to give a special mention. He's not someone that we've spoken a lot about. Marcus Windhager didn't have a massive game by any stretch, but his last quarter I thought was very strong. He had 7 tackles, and the way that he contested the ball and contested the man, I thought was fantastic for a kid his age in that sort of pressure situation when you're down on personnel and kind of everything's going against you. I thought his contest was very impressive. Another shout out to Dougal Howard is someone who I think that we've all probably had a crack at times on this show over the last couple of years, but he went at 100% disposal efficiency on Friday night with 10 kicks. He was very strong, especially when Josh Battle kind of moved out of the back line and into the ruck. I thought Dougal Howard held things down superbly. Couldn't sneak him in for a vote this week. You've already mentioned Crouch and Gresham and Seb Ross, who you gave a vote H. I tried really hard to sneak him in, but just couldn't. but he was right on the bubble. And you're right, that third quarter, I think I tweeted at about 3/4 time that everyone was going to talk about Jack Higgins' 3 goals in that quarter, but Seb Ross was involved in absolutely everything. And one of the things that I've kind of noticed this year is that he seems to be running a lot more freely, and that his disposal has increased, whether it has increased from an efficiency standpoint or not, but just the eye test. His kicking looks cleaner. His disposal just looks cleaner and nicer, and he's hitting targets that previously he would miss. And I wonder if, because there's not so much of an over-reliance on a guy like him or Luke Dunstan in previous years or anybody else, that maybe Ross is able to do the things, and the role that he's been given suits his skill set a lot more than previously, even going back to his best and fairest award-winning seasons. But he's playing a lot more freely. He's able to play defensive midfield. He's across half back, winning the ball back. He had 7 clearances and 9 score involvements, which I thought was really impressive from Seb Ross. And his long kicking seems to have improved immeasurably. 1 vote, the captain, Jack Steele. I think this was just a captain's game. He stood up when it was needed. 29 touches, 16 of them contested, 9 tackles, 7 inside 50s, 4 clearances, and 501 meters gained. He just did a bit of everything and just was everywhere when we needed him to be, and doing the things that we need him to do, which is, setting an example in and around the ball, but also, pushing the ball forward and doing all those things that you need your leaders to do. He did. And I thought, most weeks he'd probably get more than a vote, but this week there were a couple ahead of him. Jack Higgins, 2 votes, 18 touches, 427 meters gained for a small forward, and 4 goals, 3. You're right, H. I think it's those 2 missed shots in the first quarter that probably kept him from maximum votes. But another pretty good game from Jack, and I think he's kicked 13 goals in his last 14 quarters, or 14 goals in his last 13 quarters, something like that. He's in a pretty good patch of form at the moment, and long may that continue. But you're right, Josh Battle, clear 3-vote game, 23 touches, 10 marks, 5 intercepts, 5 inside 50s, 580 meters gained for what is ostensibly our centre half back, and obviously stepped into that ruck role when we lost Hayes, and then Marshall throughout the second half. But I think we've been trying to make him not be that utility so far this season, and not be that Swiss Army knife or swingman, whatever you want to call him, and just try and let him settle into a position, which I think he's done really well. But even before he moved into the ruck, he was having a really, really good game at centre half back. He took a towering mark in the first quarter over a couple of Giants forwards, and was just, he's just settled into this team. I think we were all a bit concerned at the end of last year about how, Josh Battle was going to fit into Brett Ratton's new team, whatever that looked like. But, he's really settled in nicely and just did absolutely everything asked of him. And you could see straight after the game, he was interviewed on the ground, and then again in the rooms with blood streaming down his face. He's given everything, this bloke, in that game, and has pretty much every game so far this year in whatever role that's been, generally at centre half back. But I saw a few people tweet that it was, the best 0 hit out game from a ruckman ever played. And it's pretty hard to argue with that, I reckon, after Friday night.
Yeah, definitely. And, I agree with a lot of those sentiments. I thought Marshall was very good in the first half before he got injured, unfortunately. Not an apology for Max King, but I wanted to say that I didn't think his 1-7 was as bad as it read. He missed a sitter in the second quarter, no question about that. But, his first shot from 55 metres out after the quarter time siren hit the post. Second shot was out wide. He had a running shot off 1 step from 50 that just missed. He kicked one in the last quarter that looked like a goal. It just sort of bent the wrong way. He had probably 2 bad misses out of the 8 shots. Yes, he's been kicking better than that this year, but I wouldn't call it the yips. I would say he had some difficult shots that didn't quite go his way and missed 1 genuine sitter. That was a really bad miss in the second quarter, but not as bad, for example, as the Geelong game last year when he missed a stack of those shots. But Obviously, he'd want to kick straighter than that. Apologies to Seb Ross. I agree with everything. I thought he was outstanding. Ben Patton, obviously, I think did a reasonable job in nullifying the opposition's best player, as did the likes of Wilkie when he rolled through there, and various others as well. Also, apologies to Gresham for his second half, especially for Jack Sinclair, who continues to play well. But I gave a vote to Jack Higgins. He's proving to be a match winner. His third quarter swung the game, no question about that. 2 votes to Jack Steele. I thought he was the best midfielder on the ground, and every time he got the ball, he used it in such a safe and assured manner. He had a hand in so many of our scores. He was just outstanding. And 3 votes, to Josh Battler. He knew he was going to lose the hit-outs. He had to compete. He had to make body contact. He had to influence the ruck contest. He did that. That run-down tackle in the third quarter was inspiring. And his ability to then get around the ground. I think he had 13 possessions after he went into the ruck. The intercept marking, the pressure, a terrific game. And it reminded me a little bit of the game that Paddy Ryder played on Anzac Day for Essendon way back when they discovered that he was a ruckman. David Hill did his knee in that game, and they threw Paddy Ryder from centre half back into the ruck, and he won the medal. Look, Josh Battle's not a ruckman, and he did the job for us. He's a defender, and that's where he should play. But it's amazing that last year the biggest issue was we were playing him in so many different roles. Settling him into a spot this year has allowed him to find his best. But then when you do release him, he's got the confidence to go off and do that when the time comes. So, 3 votes and tremendous effort. You had to be proud of what he produced.
It's funny. Yeah. It's funny you talk about kind of understanding that you're going to lose the ruck contest. Saw a tweet from James Soretta on Twitter today, actually, when Mason Wood was told he was going to be the second ruck after Hayes and Marshall got injured. And Mason Wood says to Jared Roughhead, "Sure, where do I hit it?" And Ruffy just goes, "Don't worry, you won't be hitting it." I think that just kind of says it all. You give up the hit outs, you give up the ruck contest, but you don't give up the contest. Mm-hmm. And that's all that was asked of them. And that is, I think Jack Steele even took a field ruck contest. And that's all you can ask is that, you know that these guys are not going to be competing with 202, 203 centimeter ruckman for hit outs, but to compete physically, to make sure that they earn every one of those hit outs, to make sure they earn every one of those touches, is all you can ask. And they did that admirably.
When you're down no ruckman, you just got to make it as hard as possible. And the best thing you can try to actually do is the midfielders need to learn where's their ruckman putting the ball, where are they putting the ball, where do they want the ball. That's where we're able to pick a few off them. And they got Bruce got to sort of the point where he's telling his midfield, "I'm just hitting it long." You could basically tell him, "I'm going long." That's it. He actually waved to him and said, "Get down the field." So he knew that they weren't winning the ball down at their feet so often because the pressure we were putting on the ball when there was hitting the ground was immense. So just that, just that pressure we're able to put onto him gave us that. I guess the advantage over him in the way of, okay, we've got that extra midfielder in there, I guess, in the way that we don't have the ruckman. That extra midfielder that's right in there in the middle from the start is going to help us move the ball out of there. So we were able to, I guess, account it, but luckily we got, Paddy back this week.
Yeah, definitely. You kind of had the feeling that law of averages with us would be that, if we were down a ruckman, we would then lose the others and be challenged like that. But good to respond in the manner with which we did. Now, we're all diehard Saints fans, and those of you listening are as well. And our next guest certainly is one. It'll be a very familiar face on your TV screens each night when you watch the news. But also, if you had a look at St Kilda's streamed Best and Fairest last year, or have been in attendance when they've had them in recent years, such as 2019. I speak, of course, of Channel 9 journalist and newsreader Alicia Loxley. Well, we've had a great mix on Unplug It over the last few years, from current players during lockdown to past players. We've had the chance to speak to a couple of premiership players this year. We've had a chat to some celebrity fans as well. And our next guest is one of those, a presenter, a reporter and journalist with 9 News Australia, and doing some terrific work across that space. Has done MC roles at the club, be it Best and Fairest, and of course a passionate lifelong Sainter as well. Alicia Loxley, thank you very much for your time.
Oh, thanks very much for having me, guys. I really appreciate it.
Now we'll go back to the start of the journey, which is what we would normally do. How did the St Kilda blood, I guess, infiltrate the Loxley family?
Well, normally I say I blame my dad, but I guess with the start of the season and how well we're going, I can sort of thank Dad for leading me down this path. My dad was from New South Wales, but he went to boarding school in Melbourne and lived in St Kilda. And so he became a passionate St Kilda supporter. And he would take my brother and I down to Moorabbin, and we would watch games from when we were, very young. And then, of course, out to Waverley, where my, memories of it were just being freezing. Stewie Lowe continually missing kicks on goal. And, a lot of disappointing results, I guess you could say. But yeah, it's been a lifelong passion. I moved over to WA and found myself on the Western Saints as a committee member. And I remember Dad came over actually for Robert Harvey's 350th game, which was an incredible win, of course, at Subiaco in enemy territory. So yeah, it's been a really long love affair that's had a fair bit of heartbreak with it as well. But there was no choice in our household of who to go for, really. So it was the Saints all the way.
Alicia, thanks for coming on the show. When we put the call out every now and then to ask who people want to see on the show or what guests they'd like to hear from, we always got the standard, we want Plugger, we want Eric Banner, etc. But your name always comes up. So I really appreciate you taking the time to join us tonight. But you talked about going to Moorabbin and Waverley and that sort of stuff. Is there any, I guess, singular memory of those days as a kid going to the footy that kind of stands out for you? Any event, any moment that you kind of think that was my time as a kid?
Oh, it's funny, at Moorabbin, I remember my brother, Dad always used to say that my brother was just busy watching birds who were sort of in the stadium, and I was always very focused on the footy, but there was also always lots of kids around, and he said I was sort of like the Pied Piper, all the kids were just running around and we were just having a great time. And I remember that, and I do remember kind of those long drives because I grew up in McLeod, which is northeastern suburbs. It's a long way from Moorabbin, it's a really long way from Waverley, and it was just a mammoth effort to get out there, but always worth it. And I remember being sort of, thrashed a couple of times. We were out there at Waverley, but a highlight was, of course, always getting out onto the ground afterwards and having a kick and ducking the footy. And it was always, no matter the result, that was always amazing. And, my dad was always not overly positive about sort of how we were going, of course, because of lived experience. But yeah, they're my memories. I and as I mentioned before, I just remember Stewie Lowe always lining up for kick, and my dad just couldn't watch. He sort of had his head in his hands, and I always used to think you're being a bit rough on him, but sure enough, he would probably miss it, and then proving Dad right. But they're my sort of memories. As far as match highlights, my memory doesn't serve me too well, but I always had number 7 on my back. Nicky Winmar was my favourite player. I had an iron-on transfer. The bottom of it was always kind of flapping off, it hadn't been done properly. I was lucky that then obviously Lenny Hayes took over number 7. So he was that was a brilliant swap over. Didn't have to change the number. But yeah, I have brilliant memories. I remember Dad and I went to the we went to the 95. Actually, my first grand final, I should say, was 1995, which was a big thrill. Of course, any Melburnian, all you want to do is get to a grand final. 97, somehow I'd been talked into by a friend to be part of the pre-match entertainment. So she was part of some dance school, and randomly we ended up on the ground. I was in a Hawthorn pajama set because you just got given what you were given. We were sort of lifting the banner and all that stuff. And they obviously don't give tickets to those kids who are out there doing the pre-match entertainment. So I ran to Jollymont Station, like got on the train, mum picked me up at McLeod, got home, and we were looking okay at half time. And then, of course, Darren Jarman just like destroyed us in the second half. And so I was in tears for the rest of it. But they're my sort of, I guess, standout memories. The night flag was pretty exciting. I think I banged pots and pans on our front doorstep for that, obviously starved of like a lot of, flag success. So that was a big moment. But they're probably the moments that stand out for me.
Follow a similar path there. Actually, 95 was the first grand final I actually went to as well. So it's a little interesting one there. But
yeah,
I was about to ask you've told us now that Nicky Widmar was the number on the back, and you obviously knew a lot about Stewie Lowe and that. But is there any sort of players that maybe you sort of liked that maybe weren't at the top of the level, that were sort of like someone that I guess someone who did the hard yards, you sort of like go, oh, that's a player that I kind of really liked, or someone just a little bit out there, I guess?
Yeah, I'm trying to think whether there was anyone sort of, like, I guess it's hard when you're in primary school. Like, of course, like Tony Lockett was just a massive deal. There weren't many St Kilda supporters at my primary school in Rosanna, but I love Barry Hall, like watching him, and I always loved watching Lee Montagna, and got to host a best and fairest with him, which was really awesome. It was lovely to get to know him, because I love the way that he played, and that's been really great as part of my professional life, to be able to then meet these people. Of course, Rui's not someone that you would say is one of those players who's not a superstar. Like, he is an absolute superstar, and meeting him and working with him and getting to know him, he's just, as you guys know, like a terrific bloke. But yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Like, even doing the latest best and fairest, and we had to do it virtually, of course, because of COVID, and so we did it from these studios, but Max King was there, and gosh, it was really just refreshing to meet, and lots of the younger players are like this, but what a lovely, like, guy he is, and so talented, and hasn't he come on this season, but just so nice to meet someone who is so unassuming, and just obviously world at his feet, but certainly not reading his own press, and I think that's what's so great about our team at the moment, and always has been. Like, I think we've always sort of been, rather than a team with a standout individual, we've always sort of had that team of wonderful players, and so hopefully that continues. Like Robert Harvey, I think, has always been a massive favourite, and what a standout person he is as well off the ground too.
It's amazing the symmetry that between all of the stories. My grandparents settled in St Kilda. That's how we came to be St Kilda supporters, and then they lived in McLeod for 45 years.
Oh, wow.
So quite extraordinary
Amazing.
that it all ties that way. But you mentioned the opportunity to host Best and Fairest. Aaron and I were there in 2019, and obviously a lot's changed since then. But a really significant night. Obviously, you were hosting it, but the night had that somber mood with the tributes to Danny Frawley at the start of it, and then obviously there'd been a coaching change with Brett Ratton coming on board. I think Eric Banner was there that night as well. It kind of felt like that for you, that might have tied it all together, where it was lifelong Saints fan. Here I am hosting a function in person, and we're paying tribute to somebody who was such an important part of this club.
Oh, yeah. And the mood side of stage was really, when I say somber, like, it was, obviously everyone was just reeling and wanting to pay tribute to Danny Frawley and get the tone right of the night, because obviously from memory they started off with an instrumental piece, and they paid tribute to him right from the start, and it was just a real feeling of wanting to make sure that tone of the evening was right. But seeing and Stewie Lowe, I'm pretty sure, was side of stage. I'm trying to think who else was there, but those closest to Danny Frawley were all standing there as they played that tribute piece, and you could just see the sadness and agony amongst that group, because what a huge loss that is. And you know, I remember, like, when you go back to that, like, last question about players, like, he absolutely was a favourite of mine, Danny Frawley, and yeah, it's just terribly sad, isn't it? And you could see how the club just really wanted to make sure that they paid tribute in the right way, and I think they did it really well. Like, I think those nights are often nights of celebration. Of course, when the season hasn't gone that well, often it's kind of you know, trying to also get that tone right. But with something like Danny Frawley's passing, it was it felt like a really significant evening, you know, for the club, and I think they did it really well.
The tributes to Spud aside, and yeah, I think it's always, it's tough to have those conversations around Danny Frawley. And I remember Parko that week, you and I at Moorabbin sitting in the centre circle at Moorabbin having a beer, just kind of pouring one out for Spud. And even then, like, you're hard to not get choked up and let the tears flow. But I guess outside of all that type of emotion, but do you pinch yourself that you get to be in these positions now? And obviously you've got the profile, you've got the history and the experience and the know-how and the knowledge to go out and do these things with and for the footy club?
Oh, absolutely. Like, it just feels, you know, often like a bit of a dream, really, because, as you guys know, when you support a football club, it's just part of you, isn't it? Like, it just, and people who don't feel that way about a football club, like, think that's ridiculous and don't really get it. But yeah, like, as you know, it's been like, it's the love for the club makes the you know, those losses so painful, but how good is having that commitment to something? Like, life is not the same without having that, I reckon. And so people who don't get it, I think, and of course I would say this and you guys would say this, but I think they're missing out. I reckon they're missing a big gap in their lives. And so to be able to, yeah, we just had another function on Friday, like St Kilda's doing this STK business event, and they're trying to you know, make that into a really successful business networking lunch series, and it's working really well. We had Sally Capp, the Lord Mayor, there, and Ray Chamberlain, who was talking, of course, about all the dissent changes with umpiring, all that sort of stuff, which was great. But yeah, I absolutely pinch myself. It's, as I say, like, being able to work alongside people like Nick Del Santo, Lee Montagna, Rui, you know, Matt Finnis is excellent. It's just a really like awesome thing to be able to do as a supporter, of course, because you know, you just love this club, and so to be able to do that sort of stuff is awesome.
Now, the other part, or I guess your main job, is reading and reporting news. Has there been any situations where there's been a story about the club and you've sort of gone, oh, I really don't want to read this, or another one where you're edging and going, I want this to be the first story of the day? Or is there any sort of stories you've been, I guess, had put upon you that you had to have reported on, and just got to try to keep that, I guess, allegiance aside to be able to read it out?
Yeah, I mean, I did a bit of sport reporting when I was in WA, and of course, when you're in WA, no one cares about St Kilda. All you focus on are the Eagles and the Dockers. I remember having to sort of, I'm trying to think, I don't know whether it was, I can't remember what the story was in relation to the Eagles. I remember having to sort of stalk out Subiaco and, you know, shove microphones in some of the players' faces, including Chris Judd, who wasn't that impressed with me. So when I think back to that, I'm like, oh gosh, you know, it's a tough job that some reporters have. Look, not really. Like, I think, yeah, I haven't had to do that in my reporting life, which is good. I think if I was probably in sport, that would be different. And that's where it is tricky. If you're an ambassador for a club, then you have to also report on the matters of that club, then that's where you can be a bit conflicted. But thankfully, because I'm not in that department, I haven't actually had to do that, which is a good thing, because it's just good to keep, I think, that sort of thing separate, because of course the newsroom has to report on what's happening. And so if there's a scandal associated with the St Kilda Football Club, then, you know, that has to be reported on, but that's not an area that I, you know, get into.
last one from me, obviously working alongside Peter Hitchener as well is another one within the St Kilda family. And I guess broadly speaking, have you been able to sort of, we seem to have more of those public profile celebrity fans than almost any other club in the competition. I know when we made the finals in 2020, I think they had yourself, the late Shane Warne, Eric Banner, these sorts of people doing photo shoots and stuff like that. So have you been able to rub shoulders with some of that, I guess, celebrity brethren, be it Warnie before he passed or Eric Banner and these sorts of people?
Surely there's a Saints celeb WhatsApp group or something.
I wish I could say there was. I actually knew Warnie quite well. We worked together on that sort of short-lived variety show that he did, Warnie, and I was sort of the roving reporter, but also female host on that. So got to know him quite well, and that's been so sad to come to terms with his loss, because what a massive loss it is, and I'm so sad for him and just so sad for his kids. And it's funny, I was thinking about him, I was thinking, God, he never got to see a flag. Like, he never got to see the Saints win a flag, and he loved our club so much. We talked about the Saints a lot when we were working on that show, because it was sort of our thing that we had in common, right? And I haven't met Eric Banner, but I love how much he's all over the club. Of course, Shane Warne. I think Shane Warne got Ed Sheeran along, didn't he, to a game not too long ago. And Pete Hitchener, of course, being a massive Saints fan. Tracy Grimshaw is a massive Saints fan, so we've got like quite a few at Channel 9. But we don't want to take anything away from, of course, all of the like absolute diehard fans, and just sort of like take any sort of attention away from people like you guys who are clearly massive St Kilda Football Club people. But it's I just love the club, and I think we do have some really great people, of course, around. Molly Meldrum, and I think that reflects that it's not easy being a St Kilda Football Club supporter. It hasn't been easy, of course, now that we've got the biggest drought. But that's not what it's about. Like, it's, it's funny, like when you meet people who are Saints fans, I don't know, there's like that sort of instant connection and that instant sort of feeling of like, you get what it's like you don't go for that sort of easy hit of a win. So like there's a few, I guess, celebs around who support the Saints, but such a great club.
Alicia, last one from me, but we do a segment on this show called That's So St Kilda. What comes to mind when you hear the phrase "That's so St Kilda"?
Oh, that's so St Kilda. Like to win an unlosable game. I shouldn't say that, should I? That's so St Kilda. Oh, that's hard. Put me on the spot. That's so St Kilda. Oh, I don't know. What are some of the other things that people have said that might be give me some inspiration?
A classic example would be Jake Bowie being a superstar at Melbourne when his dad played 85 games for St Kilda, not 100. Yes. This week, not to spoil some that we might mention, but Melbourne getting riddled with COVID the week before they play us, not the week they actually play us. Those sorts of things. The bounce of the ball in the Milne.
Well, that is so St Kilda.
That sort of stuff. Yeah.
Isn't it? That is so St Kilda. I was actually lucky enough to be like watching in the Channel 9 box that day, because I'd come down from Sydney for Weekend Today, done the news outside the MCG, and I was sitting in there with like Tony Jones, massive Collingwood supporter, Gary Sweet, massive Collingwood supporter. I was the only St Kilda supporter in that like group, and that's probably so St Kilda, isn't it? That we like, I didn't think that we were sort of, I didn't think we had it at all that day, but then from nowhere we were kind of like so close, and the bounce of that ball. But yeah, like it's funny, isn't it? I've gone over that a few times in my mind, but yes, they were able to sort of have it over me a week later, which was a bit of a shame. But that is so St Kilda, isn't it?
How are you at the moment with the ability to get to games, obviously the commitments you have and all that? Did you still get along to, I guess, as many games as you'd like? And how's the family with supporting the club? Have you got everyone supporting the team? And
very good question. It's a very good question because it's a movable feast. I'm not sure if you guys have kids, but far out, the parents get the last say, I reckon. It's like the kids they go to school with or the next door neighbour who's 12, who's, their hero. So whoever he barracks for. But I feel like I've finally, my husband's a Dockers supporter because he's from Perth. And so we're having sort of quite a lot of success in our household at the moment. But my youngest, Ada, my daughter, she is definitely St Kilda. I think Archie, the oldest, is definitely St Kilda, but Ned is kind of wavering a bit. He's kind of heading back to the Dockers, but I reckon over the long term I'll be okay. But the boys didn't switch to St Kilda because of me. They have a friend at school, Ollie, who goes to St Kilda, and so randomly they came home one day like, okay, we're on board with St Kilda. Getting them like Guernseys and getting them gear always helps as well. So I've finally managed to get them on board. But as far as going to the games, it's pretty difficult being the weekend newsreader because now I'm reading Friday, Saturday, Sunday nights, and so I don't really get to go to many games at all. But yeah, always watching from work as much as I can, and get to the games as much as I can, but not as many as I'd like.
I was going to say, you might be lucky being up against the Dockers because it's the one team that we can say we're one up on. So
yeah, I know, exactly.
Well, Alicia, your knowledge, I think, puts a lot of people to shame. You're certainly one of us in every sense of the word. Your recollection of history and things like that is incredibly impressive. So thank you very much for joining us, Go Saints, and we appreciate you sharing the journey with us tonight.
Oh, thanks, guys. And as soon as I'll hang up, I'll think of something that's so St Kilda, I'm sure. But go Saints, and what a great start to the year. They're playing really well, and let's, who knows? I said at work, actually, I was like, I'm not keeping the lid on it. I turned 40 last year, so I feel like I'm halfway. So, I'm just going to enjoy this because who knows if we might not, we probably, who knows? Anyway, I'm just going to enjoy it for what it is.
We expect there's always pain somewhere, so we'll just enjoy this until that next little bout.
Let's get carried away. Let's go crazy.
We'll ride the wave. Thank you.
Thanks so much, guys. Appreciate it. Lovely to chat.
That was Alicia Loxley, passionate Saints fan, and great to hear her story, and we'll try to bring you plenty of those over the course of the season. We look ahead to Port Adelaide, and probably, it's been challenging trying to track down people like, the great guests we've had, like Robert Harvey and Lenny Hayes and Nathan Burke and Stuart Lowe, etc. But I think the biggest challenge would be if we could find a living person that has been there in the flesh when St Kilda has played Port Adelaide at Marvel Stadium. If anyone knows anybody that's ever seen a game like that, obviously last year we played them at Marvel, but no one was there. But yeah, we've played them in China, we've played them in Cairns now, we've played them 4,000 times in Adelaide, we've played them in Tasmania. So if anyone knows anybody, might have to go to consult club historians and things like that. But you'd have to go back in time a fair way. But we turn our attention to them. It is a bogey side. We've only beaten them once since 2011, and that came in 2020, obviously in a year that we made the finals. And usually that's an indication that you're a good team when you knock the bogey sides off in those years. We lose Jack Hayes, and it's obviously worth pausing on that. His contribution in the start of the year has been outstanding. He's been a wonderful recruit. His enthusiasm, his work rate, it's extremely sad, obviously. I think most of us were pretty flat within the game when we heard that news that it was an ACL. Great commitment by the club. I loved what they did in the immediate aftermath of the game by making that commitment to him that he would be there next year. And I think that's a really good message to everybody. We are going to miss him because you would anticipate that Paddy Ryder at his age is not going to play every game. So we're going to have to call on resources and we won't be able to call on him. And that's unfortunate. That puts the pressure on Tom Campbell or perhaps a kid in Max Heath. But we'll cross that bridge when it comes. But at this stage, it looks like that might be the only change. For Ryder. Jones and Billings have been confirmed to play VFL. Billings, obviously, that's a significant one. Zach Jones probably would have played AFL this week if not for the COVID situation last week. I think Hunter Clark probably the week after. So I would imagine, Nick, that's probably the one change. And it's great to get Ryder back, but I wish Hayes was being left out on balance rather than the alternative.
Yeah, spot on. I think it's worth mentioning. You talked about his work ethic and drive, and obviously it's taken him a while to get to this point. And we've spoken about the difference in mentality and physicality and the way that we play football. And I think that potentially watching Jack Hayes go about it either at training or in games or match sim or whatever can help bring along some of these other guys that are maybe a bit jaded or spent time maybe wondering, what does their future hold? Do they have a future at St Kilda in AFL football? But watching his enthusiasm, his work ethic, his ability to just force himself to get involved. And you saw even on Friday night, he's obviously done the ACL and then sprinted as much as he could sprint to get to stand the mark before he ran off the field. And then obviously he's pinged it again as he kind of got his studs caught in the turf. And that probably, maybe it was partially torn and then fully torn in that moment. I don't know how it worked, but yeah, he was clearly not right. And you saw him, holding his knee before that. And then he kind of ran to stand the mark and go and play his part, play his role. And, we are going to miss him. It's pretty rare that we get a first-year player that's able to come in and have the impact that he's had. And like you said, Parko, I think the ability for us to rest Ryder, potentially rest Marshall, is going to be a lot harder now without Hayes. It does look like that Ryder in for Hayes is going to be the only change. I think there are still some question marks about the fitness of Rowan Marshall. Obviously, the corky on top of the corky was pretty painful. It's not a serious injury by any means, but is clearly painful and hard for him to be mobile and agile and all the things that we know Rowan Marshall can be as a ruckman forward, which is why I think they've taken Tom Campbell up to Cairns, and Campbell was at training, part of full training today. Rowan Marshall was kind of training on his own. I think he did some light running and some handball drills, and that was about it. Whereas Campbell kind of filled in the main session. So that'll be interesting to watch whether there's any other changes. But hopefully Rowe is good to go, and Ryder for Hayes is the only change.
I think that's pretty much all we're going to be seeing. As I think you've seen the same thing. I saw the picture of Marshall just training pretty much by himself with one of the other coaches also off to the side, not actually joining in the group. So it's one of those injuries that it could be fine by the weekend, but it can hang around too for longer than you'd hope. I mean, we've seen players miss years with corkies. It's just the sort of thing that we hope it's just one of those ones that you sort of just keep stretching and stretching, and it's gone by the following weekend. And he's right to go. But
was it Armo a couple of weeks ago on the show that said he missed half a season or most of the season
with the cork?
Sharon Geary as well.
Yeah. So it can be a pretty serious injury in the end if it's I guess just gets the right spot. That's one thing it can be. It just be in the wrong spot, and it can be a long-term thing. But he's up and about. That's the main thing. He's still training. But hopefully, as I said, come by the weekend, we're still a few days away. Just keep stretching, keep ice, and keep stretching, and you'll get up and ready for the game. But to have Marshall and Ryder back together, at least Marshall's back this week. At least we didn't lose both ruckman the week before, because that would have been this week would have been absolutely basically, well, I guess we did beat them with almost no ruckman, but at the same time, it wouldn't have been good going into the game with no ruckman. So, the luck that we do get Ryder back this week is a good thing, and I might see Marshall play maybe a bit more forward if he does get up, and Ryder might have to take a little bit more ruck than he normally would.
Should be fresh after 2 weeks off. So
but Marshall will be able to so he'll only have to take, I guess, the centre and the back line, so Marshall can look after the forward half of the ground to the majority of the game. So he'll get a little bit of a rest every now and then when the ball's down our end. So I guess that means the longer the ball's down our end, the better as well. So
they had Port's got Lysette out, but that young guy Hayes, I think he had 47 hit outs against West Coast, but that was against Bailey, the other Bailey Williams
Yeah,
or whatever his
yeah,
name
it
is.
was-
So, yeah.
It just wasn't a good week for Ruckman. And
No, it wasn't. But it's a stiffer challenge certainly for that young Port kid this week, and it's a good chance for hopefully us to control that area of the game. As we said, Jones and Billings to play VFL this week. Ryan Burns had 34 and was BOG in the Sandys draw, an impressive draw coming from behind against the Giants. Dean Kent had 4 shots a goal in the last quarter and kicked 2, had 25. Highmore had nearly 30, I think, in the back half. Bytel was pretty good. Cooper Sharman kicked 3. So Max Heath was solid, not as good as the week before, but solid. So there's some players playing well at Sandy now that we can call upon, and obviously Jones and Billings are going to make them stronger. They play Frankston, I think, this week, so who aren't a bad side, but it's certainly a winnable game with those guys in it. So we'll see what happens. On Port, as we say, we always struggle against this team, and it's a mark of progress that you beat them. They found some form last week, but look, they played against a side that was shit house, let's be honest. So they'll get more heat and more pressure this week, certainly, than they had last week, significantly more so. And we just got to hope that we can expose that. I mean, they've dominated realistically 6 quarters in a row, because at the second half against Carlton, they blitzed them as well. So they found a bit of something, and they've got a bit of spirit, and certainly on paper, their squad is still pretty good with, even their forward line with Finlayson and Marshall, Georgiades, Gray, Rosie can go down there, etc. So that they've got some spark, and look, that they won't be easy to beat, but at the same time, I still feel reasonably confident about it. I'm starting to build a bit of trust in us. I don't like playing at these random venues because it feels like things go wrong, like when we played Adelaide last year and Melbourne in Darwin the year before that. But yeah, it's again, we probably say it. It's another box we should tick, and I think going into a Melbourne game, we need to make sure we win this and just keep that momentum rolling into that. So cautious that they're a good side, and cautious of the fact that we never beat them, but we really need to be doing that this time.
Yeah, again, like last week, like the week before, these are the games that we need to win. We need to put teams that are well below us on the ladder, we need to put them away. And we need to keep winning these, because from here on out, there aren't a lot more of them. The second half of our season gets incredibly difficult from a fixturing, from a schedule perspective, strength of schedule, etc. We've got by far the worst remaining fixture of any team in the competition that you touched on earlier, Darren. It's going to be very difficult, and if we want to be playing finals, we've got to be taking our opportunities and making the most of these games, because we're going to come up against a lot harder opposition in the next couple of months.
You basically got to beat the teams that are going to be around your position in the ladder. That's you beat the teams below you, and then you need to, I guess you got to say you got at least 50-50 with the top 8 if you're in the top 8. That guarantees you making finals. So it's a lot of at the same time, there's a lot of I guess teams around the same point that we are playing each other as well. So we've got to hope, on top of that, we win our games, and then results sort of level out between those other teams as well. And just, as things go right, we're right there amongst it. And get the wood over a couple of those other teams that we're fighting with, and we're looking reasonable. So it's just a matter of you just don't want to drop off. That's the first thing. We'll know pretty early on. I'm talking within a few weeks' time. You go, okay, we're looking good, or okay, here we go. Now we're in for a bit of pain. Or let's see how we get through this. So hopefully we're not begging for the buy to get here sooner rather than later. And going into the buy, we're still well above the 50-50 mark, and looking good to get into the second half of the season.
You mentioned, Parker, earlier about that starting to have that confidence in the side that they can get the job done, and I think that's one of the differences now, is that in previous years we could go into a game knowing that even if we bring our absolute best, we're no shot at winning a game. Now I think if we bring our best, if we turn up with the effort and intensity that we have done for the last 6 weeks, then yes, there were some periods against Collingwood in round one, but that second half, the third quarter was pretty good in that regard. It certainly wasn't a lack of effort that cost us there, but especially in the last 5 weeks, if we bring that energy, that intensity, and hunger for the contest, then we're going to be competitive against every team in the competition, because of the way we play, because of the way that we prepare, our fitness now and our mentality. If we turn up, then we're a shot, and if we do that this week, then we're a real shot.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a fair summary, and it's another one, another challenge. I mean, as we said, winning 5 in a row is hard in this competition, given how even it is. 6 in a row obviously gets harder again, but it's a match that we've sold a home game. In saying that, I mean, Port Adelaide play Marvel okay, so obviously not having them there doesn't have to be a disaster. Obviously, you'd like to play it in front of your home fans, and as we say, there's always that great unknown. But if you line the two sides up on form and fitness and all of that sort of stuff, again, it's one that we should hopefully be able to get through and show some of that resilience. So fingers crossed that they can salute, and we can head into that massive clash with Melbourne on the back of 6 in a row. But I can't be thinking about that one just yet until next week. But our segments, that's so St Kilda. Surprisingly, there are still quite a few of those kicking around, actually. Yeah, I think for me, I'll probably touch on, not that you ever want to make light of COVID, but we know that it's going to impact AFL sides quite a bit over the season. This week, it's Melbourne's turn. Obviously, we lost Zach Jones and Brett Ratton and the like in recent weeks, but Melbourne loses their coach, Simon Goodwin. They lose 3 premiership players. I think it's Petty, also... I can't remember who the other ones were, but certainly Jackson was one of them. But it's this week.
Pickett,
yeah, Cosy Pickett.
And Tom Sparrow, I think.
Sparrow, yeah. So it's this week, not next week. So it's very St Kilda that would happen 1 week before we play them and not the week that we actually play them. But Nick, what have you got?
Oh, come on!
Oh, and there are still a few. I think we tweeted from the Unplugged account that at 5-1, it is getting a bit harder to find them, but there are still plenty floating around. Maybe not as big as in previous weeks or previous years, I guess. But a few people have mentioned that we've won 5 in a row and we're not in the top 4, and the fact that we were sitting in second for a period a couple of weeks ago, and we've won 2 games straight since then, or 2 games in a row, and have just dropped place after place after place, which just seems very St Kilda.
It certainly does. That's a very St Kilda stat that you're in the top 4, you keep winning well, and you drop. But H, what have you got?
I'm getting on the board the playing multiple games away. We're not coming home. It's we got used to the. I guess we were all away for pretty much most of 2020, but yeah, we've sort of. I guess it harks back to the talking about Port Adelaide before, but when we go up to Canberra and then we continue on to Cairns, it's a bit of a strange one that we then come back and play an away game at the MCG as well. So I'm sort of thinking, okay, when are we actually going to come back home again? It's getting a bit out of sorts at the moment. So it'd be nice to. At the moment, it would be so secure that we would actually win all 3 of those, but normally would get a road trip like that and come back with nothing in 3 and going, oh yeah, that's what's ruined our year. We've been on the road forever and it's really hurt us. But yeah, but we've got one from 1 so far. Let's have a St Kilda that we can actually get all 3 in a row.
Having to go from one of the coldest places in the country to one of the warmest places in the country in the space of 7 or 8 days is also a bit rough, but it is what it is.
At least they gave us 8 days in between, which was nice of them. But yeah, I mean, it's very St Kilda that we would have the toughest draw in the comp on the back of having the toughest draw in the comp. It's also very St Kilda that the 2 sides that didn't finish top 4 that we have to play twice are Sydney, who are probably the 2nd or 3rd best team in the comp, and Fremantle, who are also in the top 4. So I guess it was always going to fall that way, but we'll see what does eventuate. Even I think we've got Hawthorn twice, and they've improved as well. But Kangaroos and Gold Coast and teams like that twice wouldn't be too bad. Although you never know who's going to be good or bad. I mean, Essendon have bombed it a bit early in the year, like they normally do. But yeah, it's always difficult. We turn our attention to the Jason Blake Award for the underrated performer of the week. Nick, do you want to kick that one off first? Again, we've got a lot of unsung heroes.
We do, and I think the obvious ones, we kind of talked about Dougal Howard and his performance on the weekend. We've spoken about Cal Wilkie a fair bit. Obviously, Dan McKenzie is probably now rated fairly, given he's been so underrated, but now we're all talking about him, so he's probably not that underrated anymore. One this week that I think kind of never really gets the plaudits that he deserves is Tim Membry. I know over his time at St Kilda, he's been one of the key forwards, and he's potentially been the man in the forward line for a while, at least since Nick Riewoldt retired. But with the development of Max King, I think Membry's kind of taken a little bit of a step back. He's not in the spotlight as often. We don't look for him as often, but he just does such important work and he's a very clever footballer. He knows when to get around the ground. He knows when to lead. He knows when to push Max to lead. He knows when to get back. And I think that he does a lot of on-field leadership, on-field coaching, and just 1%ers that you don't often notice, that maybe they're off camera, they're off screen. A lot of hard running, and I think he's just a wonderful leader for our football club in the forward half of the ground, and just doesn't seem to get the plaudits that he deserves.
Yeah, so I'll go off field with this one this week. Something I saw during the week, I was like, that's actually quite a good call. In our coaching ranks, Corey Enright came in and changed the way we play our game. I don't know how or what he has done, but he seems to have got the group working really well together. And as I said, I saw one person talk about it, and a few other people were like, yeah. But I coaches don't ever get that credit, I don't think. So, like, Rats gets the credit for the team winning, and he faces up the press conferences and that, but you just don't see those assistant coaches working behind the scenes. And I think, if anything, Enright's had probably one of the biggest impacts on the team over the off-season.
Yeah, I think that's certainly a fair call. Mine would be probably a double hit, in that these two guys probably will get a lot more recognition. But out of the victory on Friday night, there was obviously a lot of talk around Higgins and the bravery of Battle and the midfield group. But they didn't dominate. But you mentioned it a little bit, Nick, earlier. But I thought the two kids in the last quarter, not just Windhager, but Wangadeen Malera, I thought their best quarter for the day for both of them was their last quarter. Tackle pressure, Windhager's clearance work, Wangadeen Malera's ball use. Not huge nights, but that's another sign of their development. The game was on the line. We were tiring. We had limited rotations. And I thought they both played a pretty significant role in the last quarter and us holding it up. So I think the contribution of those two kids, not lost in the wash-up, but probably would have got a bit more attention if not for the clear headlights, highlights of some of the other players that really did stand up for us. So I'd like to acknowledge that, because obviously when the chips were down, they were there for us, which was really good to see. I almost said Dan Butler Award, which is a bit of a Freudian slip. The Shannon Knoll Award for those who need to lift. Coming out of that game, H, do you want to kick it off?
You've already said it. I think he's probably got a week left. He's probably lucky that we are actually going into state in another week and staying away. Billings is back playing VFL this week. Jones is back playing VFL this week. There's probably two positions that we have to make. And at the moment, you look down the list of what we got, and he's probably at the bottom of the list at the moment. You feel like, so like he came in and really took off, But then we've got Jack Higgins in, and I think Jack's well and truly past him. He's just left him in his dust. And I think, he might be in a bit of trouble if he doesn't come out and have a big game this week. I think he could find himself back in the VFL the following week.
It's an interesting one. I feel like, having watched Dan Butler a lot more closely over the last few weeks, I feel like we're maybe a little bit harsh on Dan Butler. I don't know what the difference has been, but I feel like he's maybe playing a bit of a different role, where it's not about him. In 2020, it was about him getting out the back and getting on the handball at the top of the square and banging it through. And now it's more, he's more of a provider. He's more a supplier. He's playing a bit higher. He's running a bit harder. He's certainly still doing the effort things. He's not hitting the scoreboard as much as we'd like. I completely accept that, but maybe that's not his role anymore, especially as we rely more on King and Higgins, and Higgins is a very different small forward to Dan Butler. But I certainly have liked the way that Butler's gone about it from an effort and energy perspective. I like the way that he seems to have gotten smarter in the way that he, I guess, moves around the forward 50 and the way that he delivers the ball to others, rather than always blazing away, from the boundary line. I think we would have expected last year and in previous years that, Butler runs onto a loose ball, deep in the pocket, that he just blazes away and whatnot. But now you see him kind of lower his eyes a little bit and try and hit someone up at the top of the square or center it or whatever. So I don't know. I'm in two minds, because I agree, I'd love to see him hitting the scoreboard. And, when you're in the team as a forward, that's kind of got to be your job and it's got to be your role. But I'm wondering if maybe he's being given a different role by the coaching staff. But a little bit controversially, I guess maybe this is the most controversial Shannon Knoll award that we've had so far, but I'm going to say Jack Higgins. And you touched on it earlier, H. Those moments, Darren, you've spoken about it in the last few weeks about this award, but it comes down to moments when you've won five on the bounce and you're 5-1. It comes down to moments. I think everyone's playing their role pretty well, and there's no real passengers in the side, but it comes down to moments. And those two moments in the first quarter on Friday night, Jack Higgins from the top of the square trying to kick the shit out of the ball and kick the leather off it. There's no need for it. There's absolutely no need for it. This is bread and butter stuff for a goal kicker. And then a couple of minutes later, you 15, 18 meters out, 20 meters out, whatever it is, and you go around the corner and again try and kick the leather off it and try and kick yourself in the head at the same time. And it's like, why are you doing it? Just settle yourself, go back and kick the goal. It's like the easiest kick in your career is to just go back and kick straight. And he just tries to do a bit too much. He tries to kick it too hard. And just tries to do a little bit of the pretty stuff. He's a wonderful player. I don't disagree with that at all. He's been an absolute star over the last month, and he's not doing a lot wrong. But if he clears up a few of these things, like if he kicks those two goals and this game is over at halftime, and we're not talking about being concerned in the last couple of minutes, we kind of walk GWS off the park at halftime and it's game over, and you kind of put the cue back in the rack and settle in for next week against Port. But it didn't end up that way. And you mentioned earlier, Darren, about Max King and his misses. And I think people concentrate on the score and the 1-7, but majority of those were actually pretty tough kicks, like you mentioned. Whereas Jack Higgins, those two misses in the first quarter from the top of the goal square, directly in front, your very slight angle from 20 meters out, he's got to kick those.
Yeah, and he's shown a capacity to learn. Obviously, when he took that late mark and gave it to Crouch, he fed the player in a better position, which he hasn't always done. And that's what a lot of this is about. As we said, we mentioned Ben Patton, who gave away those free kicks against Hawthorn, Dougal Howard, who was playing well but could turn the ball over. It's just little things like that obviously you want to fine-tune and make sure that if you're playing the top sides in the competition, that you're nailing every one of those moments. So spot on. I mean, he's been sensational, but there's two goals that absolutely should have been kicked, and with concentration.
That's what good teams do. You look at those teams, whether it's Hawthorn or Geelong or Brisbane or whatever, and the discipline to go back and do the thing that you're meant to do. They've all got it. All those great teams have it. And if we want to be a great team, then you've got to go back and do those things.
And one that I'll mention for mine, and it's just, I guess, to ensure that he keeps his place in the side. I think he's important to us, and I mentioned a few weeks ago, he probably got into the Jason Blake Awards. he did some second ruck work on the weekend, as we mentioned. Played very well against Richmond, but probably just his ball winning is a little bit down in the last 3 weeks, and that's Mason Wood. I think he's got 11, 12 and 9 in possessions. He's still a good player, and I think he's going to hold his spot at least for the time being. But with guys like Hunter Clark who can play that role, Jack Billings who can play that role, Zach Jones who can play that role coming back, he's one guy that would just want to be a little bit careful. I like the role he plays in the team, but he probably needs to do just a fraction more in terms of getting a footy if he's going to make sure he stays in there when the players come back. So he would be my shout for this week, Mason Wood. But that'll do us for this week. Hopefully we reconvene. It's always a tricky little banana peel when you head north to Cairns. Port Adelaide have made the last 2 prelims. They're not mugs. They've had a poor season, but percentage of 95 suggests they're competitive. But we've had a much better season than they are. We look in pretty good shape. So fingers crossed we can tick another box and move that assault towards Melbourne next week and reconvene with 6 in a row. Go Saints.